All right, here we are for game one. We won the die roll. We did pretty well winning our die rolls today. Very generic hand here. Um, Lands and spells, so we're going to keep. Our opponent does double Mishra's Bobble with a Blood Crypt. We obviously fetch and surveil end of turn. Trying to look for our Oculus to put into the graveyard into an unearth. Our opponent bobbles us to see what our top card is that we're going to draw for turn. Our opponent also bobbles themselves to see what their top card is. I thought about going ahead and jamming Psychic Frog here, but I assumed they had a Bolt or a Fatal Push, so I didn't play it. I thought I'd hold up Spell Snare. Unfortunately, I went Dragon Rage Chandler, which I assumed they obviously did not have turn one, or they would have held it up with Bobble. We surveil again, just putting lands. We're kind of flooding here. We answer the DRC. We don't want them getting that value. So here we finally go out and run out the Psychic Frog. We have Spell Snare. Obviously, it still dies the Fatal Push or Bolt, but we still have a counterspell. We didn't have much else to do either. Unfortunately, there is the push. Nothing we could do. We didn't have a spell pierce. So our opponent does Burning Inquiry. So I just try and mill some stuff over. Unfortunately, they do have a hollowed one here. We really wanted to hit an Unearth and bin a Oculus. Unfortunately, we did not hit any of those. This card here was interesting, right? So I had never seen this card before. Obviously, it's an MH3 card. I had never seen this card before. This card actually kind of gives me some fits, right? So we managed to play around it, but I had never seen this card. This card is phenomenal. So I assume you'll be able to read it there on the screen. I don't know how big the screen is you're watching on, but it bestows, and then the creature gets +2/+2 flying and haste, like, which is wild to me. So anyway, they do Burning Inquiry, and then they get a hollowed one to play for free, and then get to do the Phoenix and get Nuggets for 6. Like, this is I I played when Hollow One was around before, but this is wild. Anyway, sorry for my rant there. I thought this interaction was sweet, so we'll continue on here. So obviously we have nothing to do here. We're just taking 6. So we draw nothing. We Thought Scour, and then we obviously play our Oculus here. I apologize. We Thought Scoured and then played our Murktide Regent there, because it's obviously way bigger than our Oculus. It now outsizes their hollowed one. One thing that's funny about the deck we're playing is they're filling our trash for us, and I almost feel like we're better at utilizing our trash and cards being in our bin. So anyway, they bobbled us. They draw off their bobble trigger. Now I'm pretty sure we just jam Oculus here. And now our opponent's behind no board. Our opponent has 3 cards in hand. We have 3 cards, but our Oculus is going to start running away with the game. They do have a Bowmasters here. I didn't sweep Murktide Regent. I was playing scared here. Probably not the way to go. But I assumed the longer our game went, pardon me, the better off we would be. Oculus should hopefully spam enough bodies that we have infinite chump blockers. And then obviously we can block here on the hollowed one as well if we wanted to. I was afraid of a Bolt though. So that was the only sketchy part about blocking with our Murktide Regent. Instead of Bolt, they end up having another... Pardon me, let me look here. They end up having another Burning Inquiry, which lets them draw 3 cards. We wheel 3 cards, and then obviously Orcish Bowmaster is disgusting. And since he drew 3 cards, he gets to ping my Murktide Regent. So anyway, so that's where we're at now. So we're starting to fall a little behind on board. I thought we were looking great, but tide's kind of turned, so we have to hopefully draw something here. So go ahead here and Thought Scour. Probably not the best play I could have did, right? So I could have Fatal Pushed on the Bowmasters first to save us from taking a life. The only problem is I was trying to hold this Fatal Push for the fear of missing out. So it's kind of pick your poison at this point. They're starting to go a little wide. Luckily, we do hit a Murktide Regent, so we're going to be able to play that here and have another blocker for their Phoenix and such. Again, we don't swing. I'm not willing to throw our Oculus away for an Orc Army token. And like I said, you're going to see me here. Every time we do this, we're going to they keep wheeling, and it's so rough. Probably would have been better off here for this specifically when they did this. I spell Pierce here, but we also obviously go to Fatal Push the Orcish Bowmaster. Like I said, my biggest fear was the fear of missing out, which was concerning me the most. But at the same time, I don't think we could let the Burning Inquiry resolve, because they're going to ping us 3 more times and then swing with 8/8 Orcish Bowmaster token. What I was saying before, though, as you see, we're putting lands as our manifest and just putting as many instants and sorceries as we can into the graveyard. That way, if we ever can unearth a Psychic Frog, we can exile them all and pump our Murktide Regent. It is worth noting, this isn't the type of deck list I normally play, so you'll have to bear with me. I'm sure I miss a bunch of extra value. I'm used to more blue-white control. So here I do start getting a little aggressive. It was kind of a punt here, right? So I swung and they blocked with their flyer. This Phoenix is phenomenal, and the issue I did here, right, and I realized it after I did the attack, was now that it's back in the trash, they can now re-equip to the Orcish army token, and they can give it flying and haste. Like I said, this Phoenix gives me fits. Definitely could have played around this better. Totally on me. But anyway, so that's where we're at. So we'll continue on here. Pretty sure we just play another Oculus here. Obviously, when we X out instants and sorceries, it makes our Murktide Regent bigger. Would have been optimal to do this first, so the Murktide Regent would have been a bigger creature when I swung. With that said, they still would have chump blocked to get the Phoenix in the graveyard, so I feel like it was a misplay, but it didn't cost us anything massive. So again, we get double Manifest Dread. We're putting the instants and sorceries back into the trash. So at this point, I was holding this push the entire time for the FOMO, but we ended up just killing the Goyf because we were going to die to it, and then we block, trade off, and then our opponent proceeds to concede. They were starting to fall behind. They had 1 card in hand, and we were definitely good to go. So anyway, on to game 2. See you back here. All right, we're back here for game 2, match 1. Real quick, I'll pull up the sideboard for you. One thing I didn't think about, usually I record as I play, but I was going to give this format a try where I recorded over my plays. Also, it helps me see my own mistakes when I do this with you, to see what I could have did better. Anyway, the issue I ran into is you being able to see sideboard. So anyway, here's my sideboard. As you can see, I had cut some of the stuff I could have considered. I thought our opponent was already milling us for ourselves. Then we had 4 spell snares. Could have left them in. They definitely have 2 drops, but I don't think that's where I wanted to be. Stern Scolding also could have came in, right, to stop Bowmasters. Same with spell snares. I cut Thought Scours. Again, our opponent's wheeling us, so I didn't think we needed those. So we did bring in 2 Harbinger of the Seas. Our opponent didn't look like they were playing around it much. I think we could get them off black. On top of that, we brought in our own 3 Bowmasters for ourselves, and then obviously the 2 Nile Spell Bombs came in. So that's where we're at. Obviously, our opponent gets to be on the play now, and we get to go from here. Our hand's pretty mediocre. I keep it though, right? Because our opponent's going to loot all of our stuff away. So we got wheeled there. Upside is we do have an Unearth. Our opponent has a Hollowed one. We pass back. Had to take the 4. Pretty sure we fetch and surveil here to try and find something to put into the graveyard, so we can unearth it here. Our opponent has quite the aggressive start here. Our opponent on turn 2 has put 12 power into play. So I'm going with the line. I Fatal Push one of the Goyfs. I didn't think we had time to take that much damage. Like I said, our opponent had 12 power into play. And I didn't think we had enough time. So anyway, we answer one of the Goyfs at end of turn, and that also put more instants and sorceries into graveyard, and then we could play our Murktide Regent. Again, our Murktide Regent is notably a 6/6, so we can block both our opponent's cards. This matchup felt really, really good from our side, but we'll go ahead here and see how this ends up. So our opponent does a lot of cycling here with Street Race. Then you do a Faithless Looting. Nothing super notable over here. It is notable that the Goyf is now a 5/6. They don't even attack. They didn't want to trade off. It's also worth noting when they attacked like that, they they only had black up, right? So they didn't have like a bolt or anything like that. I'm not sure if our opponent's even on bolt, but I'm not sure if I would want to. I probably will have blocked because their life total is obviously 10, right? So I would have had to block. But ideally, this worked out with our opponent not attacking because I would have feared bolt and then losing the Murktide Regent just to trade off would have been pretty rough. So here we just jam the frog. Frog's gonna come in real clutch here for us. So our opponent flashes back Faithless Looting. Their Goyf is now a 6/7, so they swing. And luckily for us, we didn't hit anything to unearth. So we're gonna pitch both these for unearth, right? And then we're gonna exile 3 cards to boost our Murktide Regent. So like I said, Frog and Murktide Regent's great. So now our Murktide Regent's an 8/8, and we can block here into their Goyf. Again, if they had a bolt here, we would have lost our Murktide Regent. But when that happened, our opponent conceded. Our opponent was at 1 card in hand when he ended, and then 12 life, and we had an 8/8 and a 3/4. And we were probably going to jam the Harbinger of the Tide because it would have completely shut them off of any type of red mana. So I would have turned off a lot of their decent cards. So anyway, this one here showed, I think this is a really great matchup. It's probably like the best matchup we had all day. Between Oculus, us unearthing, and Murktide Regent going into an opponent that's putting a bunch of stuff in their graveyard felt phenomenal. So anyway, we'll get on to match 2. Oh my god, was it not done? Get the fuck out of here, dude. Are you serious? All right, here we are. This is match 2. And I believe we keep this hand. Like I said, we were super lucky to go first in most of our games. This hand was quite questionable, to be completely honest. As we don't have a lot going on, we don't have a frog, and we don't have any way to get anything into the graveyard besides the surveils. We do get lucky and see an Oculus. I did punt here and accidentally keep Oculus on top. Obviously, I should have milled that. Go ahead here and Spell Pierce. Just want to try and keep our opponent from ramping too much. So here we surveil. I will keep a third card here, a third land. Thought this was a perfect time for our spell snare. Again, just trying to keep our opponent off some ramp. If you take notice, they have a shifting woodland, so I assume they have some combo with that card. Unfortunately, we are starting to flood here, but that land does let us play an Oculus. Should say at fetch land lets us play the Oculus. Here we get super busted, and we get a second Oculus. But for some reason, I don't know if our opponent didn't have lands, our opponent concedes this match. So anyway, I think we were in a good spot. They didn't have anything for that turn there. we obviously would probably just sit back with a counter spell up that, or we would and then flip the Oculus end of turn, and then we'd have 2 Oculus, and obviously that's a very very quick clock. So anyway, we'll go ahead here and get into game 2. All right, here we are for game 2. We're obviously in the draw. If you hear any weird snorting or anything like that, I don't know if you can see him. He shows up well on camera here, but my French Bulldog decided that he needed to sit on my lap, as he does when I'm the only person home. So anyway, here we go in the match 2, game 2. So like I said, we go second. His hand isn't phenomenal, but it does have an Oculus, a Frog, and a Force. Hopefully our lands will surveil us into something. I go turn 1 surveil. Unfortunately, we hit the other surveil land. I put it into the trash. We're already kind of flooding here. Our opponent is doing what they wanted to do last game. I'll go ahead here and force this. They only had 3 cards in hand. Want to try and keep them from finding too much. I'll go Frog. Our opponent just has all the mana now. This is not looking good for us. Yeah, game is not looking great. Opponent blows up our land. Our opponent's now at 2, 4, 6, 7 mana. It is worth noting they only have 2 cards in hand. We are able to actually activate Revolt on Fatal Push, swing, and draw a card. Our opponent's just gonna windmill slam something here. So our opponent gets to draw 2 cards. Now they have Annihilator 1. It's worth noting they're still at 3 cards in hand. The card we're playing against does have flying. We don't have a whole lot to do here. I swing to see if they block. They didn't block. So we swung there, right? So we swung there just for the reason we were hoping that maybe they do block. I probably would have pitched enough cards to have traded with this card since it has Annihilator 1. Probably not the best winning line, but we're so far behind on board here, it wasn't worth it. We do having the Harbinger of the Seas, which helps a little. But even with this, our opponent still has 6 mana on board. So 1 land in their deck, is already doing okay. So now we're going to get in this weird spot where they have Annihilator 1 every turn. And our opponent just keeps going off here. They pop another land. And this game, as you can see, with them ramping and getting the cards that they have, we're very behind here. So they attack with Annihilator 1. I don't think I can give up the Harbinger. I don't think I can give up the Harbinger here, right? Because if I give up the Harbinger, they even have more lands than what they already do. And basically at this point, the chances of us winning this game are super low. With that said, I'm not going to concede. There might be a world where we can do something, but it's highly unlikely. So I'm going to hold on to this Harbinger as long as possible. Our opponent's at 17. I guess our odds of winning are very low. I sacrificed the Bobble here. I could have played this much better and played the Bobble with the Polluta Delta, and then when I sacked it, I had forgot the interaction with where'd it go? I just lost it. Anyway, I forgot that interaction where if you sacked it, it was the same as if you popped it, and I could have paid a black to draw a card. So that was definitely a misplay on my part with Spellbomb. They swung with the Flyer Annihilator 1. I pumped the Frog, like I said. We're in a super bad spot here. I mean, just an abysmal spot here. So just getting this off the board, making a big guy, I can give it flying, and just hope that they continue to brick. Super unlikely from our opponent, but I think this is the best line we had. At this point, it's pretty much over. As you can see, our opponent, our opponent pretty much has it locked up here. I'm going to continue to play here. Like, there's a small world where I hit on Earth for the Oculus, and we have a bunch of chump blockers for the 6/6. Again, I'm not going to block. Harbinger isn't doing a ton, but our opponent's casting some ginormous creature to make us concede. They apparently can't get the mana correct, so they just pass. I don't think it mattered here. I think we were pretty much done either way. We do hit the Unearth, like we were trying to do. We get the Oculus into play. We now have a chump blocker every turn for their 6/6. The problem here is it's still not looking great. We take another Harbinger. Not that it's probably needed, but so like I said, this Oculus is going to make Manifest Shreds for us to just chump block endlessly. We do hit a counterspell. We do hit another Unearth here. It is worth noting we have no good targets in our trash. Let's look here. So our trash here is, there's no good targets. Our only good target is a Frog or a Harbinger, so I go ahead and just get the Frog back. We're fighting on here, but we're basically at the point now where if our opponent hits anything good, they're going to cast it, and we're probably going to lose, but again, we're going to pick land, so we ever hit a Murktide region or something, we can keep going. I did punt here. It's worth punting. It is worth noting that I did punt here, right? Me swinging with the Oculus was super ambitious. They were at 17. There was no reason for me to have swung. It lets them get a free swing with a 3/3. I'm obviously a 3, so I have to block. So I had to throw away my Psychic Frog. A terrible misplay on my part here. We had enough stuff in trash that I could have gave it flying and started drawing some cards. So a terrible misplay here for me. I even realized it when I swung with the Oculus and had to chunk block. Terrible play from me here. So not saying we could have won because I think he ends up drawing a bomb here in the next couple turns, but definitely a big misplay from me. Because as you see, we do hit a Murktide Regent. If I had been able to may hit a land off the Frog swing here, jam the big Murktide Regent, it would have been phenomenal. And there was a land on top, one of the top two. So again, a big misplay from me there. Our opponent is able to answer our Oculus, and then obviously they swing out and we lose. So anyway, I'll see you back here for match 2, game 3. All right, we're back here for match 2, game 3. Winner takes all for the match. So obviously this hand is super sketchy. I'd go ahead here and keep. It is worth noting that our opponent did activate the Devourer of Destiny. They had it in their opening hand, so they get to look at the top 4 cards. So it is worth noting. This hand does look a little sketchy. With that said, I have an Opt and a Thought Scour. So I assume between the two of these, hopefully I'd hit a land or draw a land. And if we do, then we got Psychic Frogs going on. Hopefully we can turn over an Oculus, get to an Unearth. We also have Consign to Memory and Force Negation. So our hand here I think is actually pretty solid, despite it being a 1 land. Of course, most 1 land hands are obviously good hands because you have all spells. But anyway, we'll see how it goes here. Our opponent doesn't have a whole lot. This is the first time I think they didn't do a whole lot on turn 1. Cling to Dust is still in the deck, as we saw the Shifting Woodlands. So anyway, we do hit the land here. We hit the fetch in the land, so you get to go Psychic Frog. And we do Thought Scour, and we do hit a Oculus. So our opponent is now ramping. So we go ahead and swing Psychic Frog. You could have made a idea to keep pumping the Frog here, but I did not at this time. So there we hit the Unearth. Perfect here. Unearth our Oculus, play a land. We're holding up Spell Snare now, along with Consign to Memory. Our opponent does have double Labyrinth, so they are going to be able to ramp something out here. So go ahead and let them have this, right? Because I assume there's going to be bigger things that we're going to have to worry about. So we do have pressure here, so I'm going to keep swinging. I was shocked here that our opponent didn't block the frog. I feel like that was a mistake on their part. I was willing to pitch some cards like Cling to Dust that we could flash back later. So anyway, we pass here because we can hold up, consign to memory with replicate. So our opponent tries to kill Oculus, and this is where we can replicate. This is where consign to memory just looks phenomenal. This card is just great. And as you see, we're kind of doing what Reanimator and Legacy does, right? We reanimate something and we just keep it alive and just keep jamming. So we draw Counterspell here, also phenomenal. Between Force and Counterspell, I feel like we're pretty solid. They do block here, so like I said, we pitch stuff just to make the frog big enough. And I forget what we manifested here. We manifested a frog here. It's worth knowing our opponent's at 6. I don't think there's anything they can really do here. They World Breaker, cool. They're going to pop a land. I Counterspell, and I'm pretty sure it's the end of the match here. Yeah, and our opponent concedes as they're dead on board. So that was a good match here. It kind of shows you what our perfect game plan is, right? You just want to have threats backed up with just enough Counterspell to get you across the finish line here. It is worth noting, whoever was on the play here basically ran away with the game. If our opponent had won first and had that curve, it may have went completely different. So this one was, I feel like, very dependent on who went first. But we did manage to get there, and I'll see you back here for round 3. All right, here we are for round 3. We did lose the die roll here. Sienna super iffy. I end up having to mulligan here. I put a land back. So our opponent is on Floodstrand. They go surveilling just like we will. We go surveilling. Our opponent just passes. It is worth knowing they've been a counterspell, so I assume they at least have a counterspell. I could run Frog out here, but I'm 99% sure it would obviously die to a Bolt. Our opponent goes Thundertrap Trainer. And they show a Flare Denial to us, so we know they're pretty much on Splinter Twin. We go Oth, we find a Spell Pierce. We're really just looking for an Unearth here. So we could go Frog, pitch to Oculus, Unearth. We play Frog, they actually Flare Denial here. And then we have the Spell Snare. And then they have, we have Spell Pierce, and they Spell Pierce back. So, not a horrible trade for us. They are down to 4 cards in the hand at that time. So we still hopefully have a window here where we can Thought Scour into an Unearth. I don't do anything here, I just pass. Our opponent tries to Deceiver Exarch. We can't let this resolve if they untap and Splinter Twin. I mean, we can counterspell it, but I think it's just easier to answer the Deceiver Exarch. So end of turn here, we Thought Scour, and then we Cling to Dust to draw a card. So this time we can go Frog, and we can also leave up Counterspell. There is a point where I could have played Oculus here and held up Counterspell. They have Flame Slash. Let me tell you, Flame Slash is such an old card. I played that back when Splinter Twin was legal the first time. So anyway, we go ahead here. We surveil, see another Oculus. We bin it, hoping to hit an Unearth. We play Oculus. They have no Counterspell, which was terrifying to me. I assume that means we were getting comboed. So they do another Deceiver Exarch. We counter this. They force. And then I assumed we were insta-dead here. And then they bolt us, which is kind of weird, right? So I assumed that they were doing infinite combo. We won and got bolted there. We were super lucky. We Manifest Dread another Oculus. Our opponent does have 1 card in hand. As we're swinging, they block 1. We go ahead and flip our Manifest Dread to kill their Deceiver Exarch. And when we do, our opponent concedes. So we did get super lucky there. We did fade that they did not have a... yeah, words are hard. I apologize. They did not have a Splinter Twin. Because we obviously only had Spell Snare. But we managed to get there. The next 2 games are a lot closer and a lot more of a slog. So I'll see you back here for game 2. Game 2. All right, we're back here for game 2, match 3, game 2. Again, we're up against Splinter Twin, I assume. I did not see Twin, but Deceiver Exarch pretty much means Splinter Twin. So they go to turn 1 Surveil. Our hand isn't phenomenal, but it has Frog, Force, Thoughtseize, and a Thought Scour. So go ahead here and Thoughtseize them, see what's going on over there. Let's just pause this here. I apologize, that was pretty quick. So when we Thoughtseize them, we go ahead and see they have a Tameo, a Flame of Venor, Lorien Revealed, a Flare Denial, Snapcaster, two Snapcasters. So I'll go ahead here and take Tameo. Tameo lets them draw cards. As you can tell, the issue with their hand, right, is that they don't have another land. But Tameo coming down just starts to let them get advantage, right? And I don't want them to start drawing a bunch of cards later in the game. Obviously, Lorien Revealed's good, but it takes a whole turn from them, right? So anyway, we go ahead here and take the Tameo. So the is worth knowing Flame of Venor is going to be a problem later on. So our opponent obviously goes and cycles the Lorien Revealed. And then they go Ghost Vacuum, which I just can't let resolve. It was a little aggressive for me to force it there, but I don't think we can let that resolve, as we have no way to remove it once it resolves. So go ahead and here and jam Frog, which they don't have an answer to as of right now unless they rip a land, which they do. So now that they rip the land, they now have Flame of Venor that we know of for sure. We swing with Frog. They actually let Frog connect, which shocked me. We draw a card. And then we play another Frog. And in turn, they try and Snapcaster. And I let this resolve. If they had something better going on, I won it. But they literally targeted Lorien Revealed. And Lorien Revealed, obviously, you can't flash that back for cycling. So now at this point, I can give our Frog Flying. I don't really want to pitch any of the cards in our hand. I give it Flying and I swing to draw an extra card. We are behind on the resource game. Our opponent does have 5 cards in hand. I do apologize. I just realized I never showed you the sideboard here. I do apologize. Let's view our sideboard here real quick. I'm very sorry. Just realized that. So I am not sure that my sideboarding was correct here, right? So as you see, Consign, right? As far as you know, don't laugh at me. I'm pretty sure Consign stops Deceiver Exarch when it enters, right? So they can't untap their guy. It will stop the ETB. So it stops the combo. I cut Spell Snares. Again, slightly questionable, right? Collect one for Snapcaster Mage and counter spells. I thought it was a little narrow. I was more worried about having other things to play. Counterspell I also took out. I know it sounds weird, but it's 2 mana, and us holding up 2 mana all the time when they have such cheap interaction, I didn't think was worth it. We did cut 1 Murktide Regent. And we did, again, it looks so weird, I cut Fatal Pushes. Fatal Pushes came out just because we don't always have a good way to activate Revolt. And since we can't activate Revolt all the time, we can't even kill Deceiver Exarchs. So anyway, so I brought in the Consigns. Again, there's 4 of them. I can see as being incorrect. But like I said, being able to stop triggered abilities, again, don't quote me. I didn't even get to test it here, but I'm pretty sure it stops Deceiver Exarch and such. And it also stops like Ghost Vacuum and stuff, because all their hate for us is going to be Ghost Vacuums if they're on the Aspiring Spikes list, or like Relics or something of that, so we could hopefully counter that with Consign and things like that. So that's the sideboard here. As you saw, we did bring in Thoughtseizes, just try and tear their hand up and get an idea of what we're playing around. So let's get back to the game here. Again, I apologize about that. I'm like I said, I usually record this live. It is for 2. We're obviously taking it. It's worth noting we are down to 11. So we try and opt here to try and find a Spell Pierce. We do not find it. We clean to dust again, trying to hit Spell Pierce. We don't hit it. And then it is worth noting, we could call that a misplay. For when they play the Snapcaster Mage, we did know they had the Flame of Venor. So us not countering the Snapcaster Mage let them get extra value off their Flame of Venor. Since they had a Wizard, they got to draw 2 cards and Killer Frog. So it might have been worth us to actually counter the Snapcaster Mage that they played as an Ambush Viper. Anyway, here we get lucky. We hit an Oculus. We just jam the Oculus. We hope it goes the distance. We also get lucky, hit a frog here. Opponent goes Snapcaster to Mage, and it's super gross. They get Flame of Venor again. They get the answer, our Oculus, and draw 2 cards. At this point, we're just super far behind here. Our odds of winning this game are super small. Unfortunately, our opponent does block, so we have to flip our frog, pitch a card to try and keep it alive. I don't expect it to live. Our opponent's at 6 cards in hand to R2. Then we get Blood Moon. I did not play around Blood Moon, and it utterly destroys us here. And I obviously mess up here. I try and Stern Scolding, and obviously they have Blood Moon, so I couldn't. It is worth noting this combination right here, it was pretty much the end. Blood Moon with us only having a black, and then Ghost Vacuum just completely hoses us. So, and then of course we draw the Force the turn after Blood Moon and Ghost Vacuum come down. With that said, I assume they probably had some interaction or counter spells to back up their Blood Moon, but. So I give our Psychic Frog flying. We still have an Oculus in the graveyard. If we can hit an Unearth, we might have a chance. On top of that, we have a Force of Negation if they ever have a twin, but the Ghost Vacuum here eventually answers everything we could do. They do the cool trick of what they call is Spawn Offspring, I guess, with their Thunder Trap Trainer. Again, our opponent's with the 5 cards in hand. So it is worth noting, I think it comes up in our third game here, for Frog and Ghost Vacuum. For Ghost Vacuum, when they exiled our Oculus, since Ghost Vacuum lets you put these cards into play, I probably should have activated Frog and just exiled my own Oculus just so they don't ever activate Ghost Vacuum, but I did not. So that is a small misplay I had. You see, we did bring in our own Harbingers. I think they usually play 1 mountain, so we could resolve Harbinger and it somehow doesn't die. We could shut them off of red. At least that was the idea, right? Then Flame of Nor, Lightning Bolt off. They probably have no way to answer the Harbinger. And then they obviously can't cast Splinter Twin. It obviously did not work out that way. I just keep shoving with Frog. Unfortunately, I have a Deceiver Exarch, which was lucky for them because I think here that was one of their only outs, right? So I went all in on Frog. They're at 7. We were going to give a flying swing for 7. And that was the exact number of cards we had. I thought for sure we had lethal here. But unfortunately, Deceiver Exarch came down. Obviously, Stern Scolding would have been amazing. If I had an island, we probably would have had game here. But unfortunately, they had the answer, and we're probably not getting there. So they go ahead and Lorien revealed just to draw 5 cards. I force, they answer it. At this point, the game was over. They had 2 Ghost Vacuums going. I didn't have enough cards in hand to pitch to give Frog flying to swing for lethal. And they have enough chump blockers with their Offspring. I play it out for another turn here. Like I said, it's pretty much over at this point, but... And then they eventually do hit the Splinter Twin. I won't make you sit here. I let them do it for a little bit just to help burn some clock off. I was behind by 2 minutes. I didn't make them actually do enough in swing, but I was behind on clock, and I wanted them to be a little more even on clock. So I'll see you back here for game 3. All right, we're back here for what's this, match 3, game 3. Opening hand was all right. We did have to mulligan to 6. Hand's not amazing, but hopefully we have a shot here. We do have an island for Blood Moon at least. So go ahead here and Thought Scour. I was a little ambitious. I was hoping we could just flip an Oculus into the trash and then hit an Unearth, but we do not. So I go ahead and Surveil, see a Counterspell on top, and I go ahead and just keep that for now. It's kind of the waiting game here. It's like whoever flinches first loses. Again, we learned from game 2, Stern Scolding on the Snapcaster Mage, so that way their Flame of Ignores aren't as great. I'll go ahead here and Counterspell Ghost Vacuum. I think they counter back here, which is perfectly fine with us, right? Because they can answer 1 card in our trash, but it leaves us exactly 6 cards in our trash, so now we can untap and go Oculus, which we obviously do as Ghost Vacuum is going to start eating our graveyard. And it's also worth noting we do have a Force Negation with Thought Scour. So here we go ahead, we get Thoughtseize and Orcish Bowmaster, so this Manifest Dread is a Orcish Bowmaster. So go ahead and pass back here. We go ahead and swing. Our opponent's at 5, we pass, play tap land. We still have Force up with Thought Scour, so it's looking very good for us. So at this point, I don't think there's much that they could do here. So they find another Ghost Vacuum. Again, our opponent was very heavy on the Ghost Vacuums. Like I said, that's why I brought in the Consigned Memories, because that card just really messes us up. Anyway, so they do this, and then they proceed to concede. So, obviously we could have answered the Ghost Vacuum there, but we didn't really care, because our Oculus was in play and not answered. So, Oculus, I think, is only answerable by them with Flame of Ignore or Double Bolt. And Double Bolt was out because they don't have double red. So anyway, that was game 3, match 3. We won this one. Not a super climactic ending there, but it didn't feel too awful. All right, we're back here from round 4. We win the die roll again. We do get pretty lucky with all our dice rolls. So we go ahead to obviously play first. Hand was mediocre, could have kept it. Mulligan to 6 again. Hand's not super awesome, but we have Thought Scour and an Opt. And a Consider. So we Surveil, see a Unearth, we keep it. I don't know why we're paused here for so long. And then we play a land, we pass. Ideally, we're going to go Thought Scour, end of turn, and Unearth an Oculus. So our opponent is on Goblins, which is horrific for us. As you can tell, their opening hand has Cavern and it has Aether Vial. Aether Vial, I can't counter anything, and I can't remove it when it resolves, and Counterspell says I cannot counter any of their spells. So they're going to get to do whatever they want, and we play a whole 4 Fatal Push. So we have hardly any removal. So our only hope here is to race them, which I'm not super optimistic about, but that's our only game plan in this matchup when they have this set up. Our opponent went and tutored for a Harbinger of their own. So we go Consider here. It's just a counter spell, which we don't need because we can't counter any of their cards. And we play a Murktide Regent, tapping out. Like I said, we just have to apply as much pressure as fast as possible. Then we give our Frog Flying to exile some more stuff. Our opponent chump blocks. And then I just pitch the rest of my hand here. Like I said, we can't counter anything our opponent's doing. Spell Pierce is worthless. Spell Snare is pretty much worthless. Our opponent Vials at the end of turn, playing a Conspicuous Snoop, which is usually never good for us. We do find another Oculus here, so we do have a lot of pressure next turn if we don't die here. Unfortunately, our opponent gets to set up Kiki Jiki on top and just go infinite. So anyway, our opponent goes here and just combos off and kills us, which is super unfortunate. We were very close to lethal. Like I said, this matchup is very hard for us. So anyway, I'll see you back here for game 2. All right, so we're back here for game 2 against goblins. Sideboard wise here, I went ahead and cut all the counter spells and all the force negations and spell pierces. And I also cut the clean to dust. Counterspell for 2 mana. I understand they don't always have Vial and they don't always have Cavern, but I feel like the odds of not having either are pretty low. Force negation, same thing, right? Like turn 1 Aether Vial. I feel like there has to be better stuff I want in the deck. Spell Pierce, same thing. I'm not hitting anything, right? Like the only thing I know of is the hit Aether Vial. Not great. Cling to Dust also took out. If I'm in a racing situation, yes, it gains me life, draws me cards, but I feel like the game's going to end very quickly. Either I'm going to lose or I'm going to win, right? Eat both ways. So I brought in 3 Bowmasters. Bowmasters is not a great removal spell. It's not great. It makes a chump blocker. Hopefully it answers a 1/1. Brought in Stern Scoldings. Again, I don't think I'm going to be able to counter any of their stuff. But at the same time, if they've cast something that's counterable, you know, it counters a fair bit of their deck. I brought in Thoughtseize. Thoughtseize there, ideally we can take a real good card out their hand and hopefully just kill them. Our overall game plan here is not phenomenal, but we're going to give it a shot. We also brought in a Consign to Memory, because I assume if they're running Graveyard Hate, it's probably an artifact, and we maybe, since we're on the play, can answer an Aether Vial. Again, I'm not liking our sideboard choices here, but we're working with what we got. So let's go ahead and get into the game here. Where obviously we lost last game, so we're playing first. He is not amazing, but at the same time, with a Thought Tower and a Flooded Marsh, hopefully we can go ahead here and get an Oculus down. We do have the coveted turn 1 play where we go Consign to Memory on their Aether Vial, and hopefully that'll stunt their development here. When they can only play 1 spell a turn, it's much more manageable than when they're playing multiple spells per turn. And just like that, our opponent didn't have a play, which is kind of shocking. We bid another Oculus. We're looking for Unearth here. This play here was kind of middling, to be completely honest. I think I should have... Well, I did what? Let's try to see here. So I think we had enough cards in graveyard that we could just went Oculus, which is probably the better play here, to be honest. Instead of playing Frog, we should have just jammed the Oculus. Yeah. Not an optimal play there for me. I think my ideal plan there was, my thought process was, I was looking for an Unearth. If I didn't hit an Unearth, I would still have Spell Snare up, but I hit a Frog, and I decided to tap out for the Frog instead. So here I go ahead and jam the Murktide Regent, holding up Spell Snare. And our opponent does take the hit from us, so we do draw a card. They do have the Snoop here, which is terrifying. We do have a push. They have their own push for our Frog. So here we're pretty much just racing. You gotta make sure they can't combo. Again, it might have been better for me to just go Oculus push here and just tapped out, because since they had double Cavernous Souls on the side over here, the Spell Slayer is never going to do anything. So, with that said, our opponent is dead on board here, and I'm pretty sure they know it. I thought they were dead for sure, and then they go ahead and bounce our Murktide Regent here. If they hadn't bounced it, we could have used Frog, exile cards, give it flying, pump the Murktide Regent big enough, and went for game there. So anyway, we go ahead here and just replay the Murktide Regent. I kind of assumed our Oculus was going to get chump blocked for days, since our opponent has so many creatures. So here I get aggressive. I didn't think they had anything, so we go ahead and go all in on Frog and Murktide Regent and able to end the game quickly. So anyway, I'll see you back here for game 3. We're back here on the draw for game 3 here against Goblins. I didn't change anything. I could have took out the Consigned to Memories because the odds of me hitting an Aether Vial, they'll play their turn 1 isn't great, but I kept it in. Like I said, I feel like our sideboard options were not ideal for this. I don't think Goblins is like a true meta deck, and not hating on it. If Goblins is your deck, awesome. That's what Modern is. Play the deck you like. But I don't think it's worth dedicating a bunch of sideboard cards to. So here we already had the Unearth. We have a Consign, a Thought Scour to hopefully set up our Unearth, and an Orcish Bowmaster, so we can kill their cards. And just like that, this opponent punished us super hard here, right? So Leyline of the Void comes down. Leyline of the Void can't be countered, obviously, on turn 0. And now half our hand is trash, right? Like, not half of it, but our 2 major cards are trash. Our Undercity Sewers, our Surveil land over here, is nowhere near as good anymore because we can't unearth what we're putting in. Thought Scour, wow, it replaces a card, but it mills 2 cards that I can't ever get back. Unearth's a completely dead card, and we have a Consigned to Memory. So basically the only real usable card in his hand right now is Orcish Bowmaster. On the upside, though, is our opponent is down to 4 cards. So hopefully our opponent kept a weaker hand and on the strength of Leyline of the Void. Unfortunately, our opponent does have another land. With that said, our opponent is down to 3 cards in hand now. It's also worth noting, like I said, Oculus is a completely dead card here. So go ahead here, flash in the Bowmasters, answer their 1/1. Our opponent hits a Cavern Souls. It's not looking great for the home team here. This play was also weird to me. They came in and pinged, but they could have pinged. Yeah, I don't know why they... Okay, they had double. Okay, that's what it was. I forgot. I was like, it was weird how they played that. Anyway, we go ahead here, play a Psychic Frog. It is worth knowing Psychic Frog is great in the... Isn't great. But it's our only threat that's actually a threat after Leyline of the Void comes down. So anyway, here we just pitch a bunch of cards because I can never get flying anymore. So our opponent tries to go in here to go ahead and kill our Psychic Frog. I go ahead and just start pitching cards. It is worth knowing our opponent had flipped a Cavern Souls, exiled one earlier, and they never did play it. We do get lucky here, and we are able to Stern Scolding. So anyway, here it's basically coming down to our race. Our opponent has 1 card in hand. A lot of these aren't doing a whole lot for us. We do hit a Bowmasters, which is great for us. And like I said, we're just all in on this Frog at this point. So like I'm pretty sure I pitch like Unearth and Oculus and stuff here. Draw Murktide Regent. Again, another dead card. Like this is straight up a race with this Frog and hope it crosses the line. So we are able to counter their ETB here, which is great. This saves 2 goblins, which is important because, like I said, we can't give our Frog flying. So it just saves 2 chump blockers for us. Our opponent just sacrifices some creatures, answers our cards, gains some life, we lose some life. So again, it's a straight up race. They hit a Snoop. Shows us they have a land on top. They now have 0 cards in hand. So again, we are all in on this Frog. And I just pitch everything but the Fatal Push. And then we hit another Frog, which is great. We Fatal Push the Snoop. I was just terrified that they might hit something off the top. With Snoop, we knew they had a land. So after they drew the land, who knows what was on top with Snoop. So just didn't want to risk it. And then we jam our Harbinger here. It turns off all their black mana. So that means if they have Fatal Push or anything, they can no longer kill our Frogs. And then we have a Spell Snare here. And then we have all but lethal. They'd had to chump here, and then there's nothing they could play to get back in the game at this point. So, probably the oddest game of modern you'll see, right? Like both players kept hands that just turned into kind of like a mediocre beatdown plan. But anyway, we were able to get there on the back of Frog. Harbinger came in clutch there probably at the end, turning off any fatal push draws that they had, and we managed to barely get across the finish line. Anyway, on to round 5 here. All right, here we are for match 5. If you don't notice, I showed you 4 wins. This is our loss. We went 4-1 in this league. We did win the die roll, which is good for us. Hand looked phenomenal from our start, right? We had Thought Scour, and if we hit something off Thought Scour, we had double Unearth with double Fetch Land. Double Fetch Land lets us surveil even more, giving us more chances to mill over Oculus and unearth it. Our opponent goes Arboreal Grazer. Fortunately, we did not mill over an Oculus. We go ahead here and just jam Frog, because luckily for Frog and for us, we can pitch Oculus to it and unearth it next turn. Our opponent's doing some weird shenanigans with lands over there. They go Arboreal Grazer. They play an Urza Saga, and then they put Springheart and Nantuko, which was a Bant Nadu card, on their Arboreal Grazer. And shockingly, this combo actually kind of ruins us some. So I wasn't willing to pitch a bunch of cards there to pump to kill the Grazer. I felt like we had a big threat, and I wanted to leave an Unearth in hand. I didn't want to waste a Thought Scour. Our opponent has Amulet here, which is rough. So anyway, as you see his combo here with Nantuko, right, when they put a land into play, they get to make a copy of whatever it's bestowed upon, so they get another Arboreal Grazer. Arboreal Grazer is, not only does it let them keep putting more like lands into play to get more value off their Amulet, it also makes 0/3 blockers with reach, which buys them a lot of time. So we put a Murktide Regent in the graveyard and conveniently draw one, which is not ideal for us. Our opponent starts chump blocking here. I want to get some of these Arboreal Grazers off the table. So I go ahead and pitch a bunch of cards here to Frog. I want to start trying to apply pressure. We obviously flip another Oculus here, so we get double Manifest Dread. So all we're doing now, with what our opponent had going on, they could cast anything in their hand, and we didn't have any counter spells, so at this point I just went all aggro. So anyway, they're able to pack there. They go and get a Titan. And at this point, I pretty much know it's over, right? They have chump blockers for days. I'm not getting through. They're getting valid cuts. They have a Titan. We don't have any ounces. I can't answer a Titan once it resolves. Once a Titan resolves, it's there for game, just like everything else. They give it haste. They get more lands, more Nantuko triggers. They have completely locked up the ground. So there's nothing we can do here. This match is pretty much over. I do play it out a little bit more, but like we have a Murktide Regent here. But they're at 17 life. If they were at a lower life total, maybe there was a small chance we could get there, but so I'll get Frog flying. The problem is, again, the reach on the Arboreal Grazer is just abysmal for us. Surprisingly, they don't block the Frog and let us draw the card. Again, from their perspective, they still have 5 cards in hand, so it's highly unlikely that any of the actions I took on that turn actually mattered in the end. So they had to pay for Pact in the upkeep. Unfortunately, it's a little hard to forget a Pact trigger when you're playing on Magic Online. And like I said, unfortunately here, our opponent had another Arboreal Grazer, right? So I'm pretty sure we were dead here regardless of what happened, right? Like I'm pretty sure in some fashion we were dead. But them having this Arboreal Grazer to block my Murktide Regent and the Frog for the next turn, if I got another one, which would have been lethal, pretty much shield it here. We did have a chance to hit another a Fatal Push, which we already had one in the graveyard. One in the graveyard, and do we have any in exile? Yes, so we had already seen 2 of our 4 pushes in 28 cards. So if we lived through his turn, we did have a chance at hitting push to answer their Arboreal Grazer, and then swing with Frog, exile some more instants and sorceries to pump our Murktide Regent. That's assuming, you know, we don't die here, which I'm pretty sure we do. That is one nice thing I did like about this deck is that we weren't full control, right? So we weren't like blue-white where we're just trying to get to the end game and then stabilize, right? This game here, we can apply pressure, but we can also play a slightly slower, more controlling game. Now, we're not blue-white. We don't have Teferi Hero Dominaria. We don't have super great card advantage cards. And I do know you consider Oculus card advantage in some aspect, but I'm talking like actual cards in hand that, like, if you sweeper our board, we'd actually still have card advantage. So anyway, our opponent goes and transmutes a Teleria West, goes and gets a Summoner's Pact, goes and gets the Dryad. So that was the thing they were missing here. I had enough chump blockers for the Titan, and that's the problem with Titan players, right? Is like, some Titan players are great, some, no offense, they're still learning the deck. And if they don't know what they're doing, like here, cool, they have a Boreal Grazer to block, so they're probably safe anyway. And they can swing with Titan here. But I'm not dead. I have enough chump blockers, 2/2 Manifest Dreads to block, right? But as soon as they go get the Dryad, right, they're going to go swing with Titan, and then they're going to go get Valakuts, and then trigger Valakuts with Dryads and kill us. So we were definitely dead here. So I went ahead and conceded. So I'll see you back here for game 3. Hopefully it goes a little better. Spoiler alert, it does not. All right, I apologize. This is game 2 of match 5. Not game 3. So anyway, here's our sideboard. I cut Spell Pierces, I cut Spell Snares, and 1 Clean to Dust and a Fatal Push. Clean to Dust is card advantage, but slow. Spell Snare doesn't hit a ton. Spell Pierce is probably the one card I probably could have considered keeping more, to be completely honest. If I can hit a Pact early, which is unlikely that they're tapped out and pacting, but still, Spell Pierce I could see keeping in here. So I brought in, again, Consign the Memory. Being able to stop a Titan trigger is great. Harbinger of the Seas, obviously great. It stops all their shenanigans with lands. And I brought in the... Oh my, I just lost the name of the card here. I apologize. Let's look here. I also brought in the Consign the Memories. Just a cheaper counterspell. It stops a Boreal Grazer if they don't play it on 1, and it also stops Dryad. Assuming they don't have Cavern, of course. So anyway, we go first. This hand is decent. We have Counterspell, Consign to Memory, Force, Oculus, Unearth. We like to, find a Frog here. We find a Thought Scour instead. We keep it on top. Hopefully we can mill over an Oculus here. And then unearth it. Unfortunately, we hit a Psychic Frog. So we just unearth the Psychic Frog. Just want to get pressure into play. We do not want to play a long game here. Unfortunately, I do have the Boreal Grazer here. So we go here and go consider. We find a land. We don't want it. It was nice. We do have a swamp now, so we can jam this Harbinger of the Seas next turn. We swing with Frog. I didn't want to pitch a bunch of cards, right? Like, our hand isn't completely awful. Consign to Memory stops their defense grid here, and they have another Boreal Grazer. Them and the Boreal Grazers are just too good. Like, that card is phenomenal in this matchup. So go ahead here and jam the Harbinger of the Seas, and our opponent, I assume, did not side in Dismembers, or was it main decking Dismembers? So we won this one. Anyway, now we're going into game 3, and as you can guess, we do not win game 3, but we'll go ahead here and I'll show it to you. All right, here we are for game 3, match 5, game 3 against Amulet Titan. I didn't change any sideboarding. Sideboarding's all the same. Hand was pretty mediocre. I had too many lands. This is still not super great, but we do have a Thought Scour into an Unearth with a Consigned Memory. So the start was looking pretty solid for us. They did go turn 1 Urza Saga. They go explore, and they're ramping away. And they always had the Arboreal Grazer. This opponent was king of Arboreal Grazers. I know it sounds so stupid to bitch about an 0-3 with Reach that ramps, but this card was phenomenal. Like, don't get me wrong, the Urza Sagas were phenomenal. So I'll go ahead here and Thought Scour, and luck was not on our side. So we have 7 cards in trash. We hit a Murktide Regent, and basically a bunch of lands. The cool thing about Unearth is if we had hit a Harbinger of the Seas, we could have reanimated it, and our opponent would be in a terrible spot here. So it's worth noting that this isn't going great for us, and we do lose this game. But I never felt like, with our sideboard plan, that we were completely out of it, if that makes sense. Now, with that said, our opponent is going to go search with their Urza Saga to get an amulet, and I'm pretty sure I consigned to memory this ability, just to try and buy us some time. So I do consign to memory so they can't go get a amulet. They have the 3rd Urza Saga. Our opponent's down the 1 card in hand. So at this point, it's not looking good. I did bin a Fatal Push. I binned it as we have no way to turn on the Revolt to answer their Dryad at this point. So again, I have to run it back here. I think I consign both triggers just because I had no other real plays to do here. Again, don't want them getting an amulet, and I don't really want them to make a construct. And I apologize, they were not making a construct. I misspoke. Anyway, our opponent has exactly 1 card left in hand and is Titan. So that's how we lost this one. So I don't want to sound too salty here. It's Magic. It is what it is. But our opponent did have a Boreal Grazer into triple Urza Saga, and then had the perfect ending of Primeval Titan. So anyway, that was the league. Hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, it's blue-black. It didn't feel too bad. I feel like it has some problems. If permanents resolve, you really have a hard time removing them in that way. But it's definitely a fun and interesting deck. Let's go back here to it. I like the idea of what it does, right? It's aggro in a way, but it also has counter spells. So if you're not looking to play blue-white and play for, the entire round, and you're trying to do something in between, this is a great thing. I don't like the lack of removal, and also resolved permanents are problematic. But at the same time, something has to give, or this would just be the best deck. So hope you enjoyed. Have a good one.